This has got to be one of the strangest locations I've ever recorded one of these videos in. It's an industrial area. There's light industry, you can hear the noise of the factories. But I'm here because it's not just an industrial area. This is the site of the Mamoas de Taco. Let's explore. The Mamoas of Taco are in central Portugal, in the district of Aveiro. They're in the municipality of Albergaria-a-Velha, in an industrial area that's also known as Taco, from which they get their name. English speakers might find it funny that a section of a city is called Taco. But first of all, know that an unaccented letter O at the end of a Portuguese word makes an U sound. So the word isn't pronounced taco, but more like taku. And while Portuguese people know about the Mexican food, the more traditional meaning of taku is a billiard cue or other stick used in a game. It can also mean a wooden bung or a plug, or a piece in a wooden floor. Algum dos meus amigos portugueses sabe porque é que aquela zona se chama taco? Bon appetit! So, in the industrial area of Albergaria-a-Velha, the Mamoas of Taco are right along one of the streets. Mamoas 1 and 3 are visitable. Mamoa 2 was destroyed when the street was constructed. The first site we come to is Taco 3. And again, it's an interesting location. There are various commercial vehicles and trucks and things around, and you can hear the noise from the factory behind me. But for Taco 3, there's not a lot to see. There's this big mound of dirt. That's what a Mamoa is. A Mamoa is the Portuguese word for a mound, or in English we call it often a tumulus. And this mound would have been built over a grave site, a megalithic structure in which people were buried, and then a Mamoa was built over it. When we find antas or dolmens in the field, we can see the stone structure, which would have been the skeleton of what was here underneath this mound. When they were being used, there would have been an opening where people could go into and out of the tomb inside. But then when it was no longer used, it was often covered over, and that seems to be the state of this. It obviously was excavated. The information sign has photos of the excavations, but presumably it was in a fragile state, or there wasn't really much left to see, so it was covered back over to preserve the site as much as possible. The signboard gives us some information about the site. Various artifacts were found, including stone tools and quartz pebbles that seem to have had ritual purpose. What wasn't found were any large stone slabs that were used to build a dolmen. The remains of a low stone wall and a few circular pits were found instead. The archaeological team published a detailed report with lots of information and many photographs. They explained that they found evidence that a Neolithic dolmen had been used, but was then destroyed and removed 2,000 years later. Both the report and the signboard give an artist's impression of how this space might have been used, first in the Neolithic, and then later in the Chalcolithic or possibly the Bronze Age. If this seems a little underwhelming to visit, I won't argue with you on that. But it gets better. Let's go on to the next site up the road. Mamoa 1 is well worth the short walk it takes to get there. It has some incredible surprises. A few dozen meters up the road from Mamoa 3, you come to Taco 1, which is a little bit grassier and a little bit nicer, still surrounded by factories, and you can hear the sound of the machinery. But this is definitely a much more interesting site, and I've cleaned off the grime from the notice board so that we could read a little bit more about it. Let's find out and explore Taco 1. The signboard doesn't have any photos, but Fernando Silva's report on his original excavations in the 1980s has some excellent diagrams and photos. The re-evaluation work in 2015 turned up more ceramic and stone artifacts, including an intriguing grinding stone that had traces of pigment on it. No evidence of paintings have been found. Yet. From the signboard, again, we can wander up the Mamoa, the mound. And Taco 1 is a little bit more interesting than Taco 3 because when you get to the top of the mound, you can actually see that they have preserved the dolmen that was inside of it, or at least as much as was left of it, so that you can come and visit it. Again, a Mamoa is the name given for a mound that covers a prehistoric burial chamber that would have had a dolmen in it. It would have been something like this, but it would have covered over the whole dolmen. The entrance corridor here is sloping upwards. Usually they would be horizontal. The Mamoa then was built over the dolmen, but they've reconstructed it in a way so that we can go and enter and experience something of what it was like back when this Mamoa, this dolmen, was built and being used. Moving into this reconstructed 6,000-year-old dolmen, we can get some sense of the passage from the outside world into what would have been an enclosed, special space. On the left side of the dolmen, as you're looking out towards the corridor, there are two remaining orthostats, or upright stones. The one closest to the entrance here has, on this side, one rectangular carving, which is very faint and hard to see. That's kind of a rounded rectangle. Not a lot here, but it's interesting. It's also interesting to see this stone, which is a kind of a schist stone. Often dolmens were made of granite. I'm not sure where the source of this stone was. Archaeologists identified the most likely source of schist was in mountains about 2 kilometers away to the east. The further inward orthostat or style on this side of the dolmen has interesting, there's two lines down here which are probably symbolic. But then there are two lines here that have a kind of a crook coming up as well, which could be a representation of what's called a shepherd's crook or a crosier. In Portuguese, they're called báculos. And that's a common symbol that's used, and stone báculos were made and used and found in dolmens that could be representing that. This upright that's closest to the entrance has perhaps simple but still quite interesting lines. There are two kind of diagonal lines here, and then three almost horizontal carved here. And groupings of lines could have some meaning. Is there a purpose for there's two and there's three? Are they oriented in a specific direction? We don't know. We can only really guess at if there was meaning or if it was simply symbolic. But understand, and if you don't believe me, go and try this. These were formed by human beings back during the Neolithic period, which was the Stone Age. They only had stone tools. So this schist rock, they would have used a harder rock to pack holes in each line and then scrape them together to gouge a line in the stone. The amount of work that took indicates that this must have been some purposeful symbol. Again, we have no way of knowing what they were thinking, so we can't quite know for sure what they were for. The middle orthostat here has some really interesting carvings, both good and bad. The prehistoric carving, there was a symbol here that looked kind of like a capital letter P. It might have been an anthropomorphic representation of a person. We don't know. But next to it, you can see that somebody has carved their name in this, or some letters, and there's some more up here. And I said about the effort that it took for the prehistoric Neolithic peoples to carve these. Whoever is doing this was using a metal tool of some sort, a knife or a screw or some sort of thing. And so it didn't really require a lot of effort for them to make these. I'm sure there was some effort involved, and it was obviously meaningful for whoever put it there. But I'll use this as a reminder that, again, when we see things like this, when we visit sites in an industrial area or out in the forest, please recognize the monumentality of these stones. These have a record of the activities of people from thousands and thousands of years ago. And while we're glad that you want to show that you've been here yourself and, hopefully strike for some immortality, there are other ways to do it. Please don't damage these ancient prehistoric stones. At the bottom of this stone, there is another prehistoric Neolithic carving, which I find very interesting. You can see it here. There's a kind of a line here that then there's a dog leg down here to another horizontal line, and then two vertical lines. To me, this looks like it might be trying to be a representation of a horse or some kind of an animal with a head, a bit of a neck and the back, and then two legs. I don't know if that's what it really was supposed to be, or if that's what archaeologists think it was. That's what it looks like to me. Finally, on the largest upright on this side, there are some amazing kind of rainbow-looking shapes, kind of concentric circles or concentric arcs, several of them here that are just absolutely gorgeous and fascinating. Often when we find artwork inside dolmens, the headstone, the largest esteo at the farthest end, the one directly opposite the entrance to the corridor, has the most elaborate decorations or paintings or carvings. This one is placed here on the side. I don't know if it was originally the headstone, or if it wasn't, I can only imagine how amazing the headstone of this dolmen would have been.
This open-air prehistoric art gallery may have an unlikely location, but it contains some absolutely gorgeous engravings.
I hope you've enjoyed this visit to the Mamoas of Taco. If you want to know more, check out my website, prehistoricportugal.com. I'll have as much information as I can find about these wonderful carvings and these sites. As always, please like and subscribe. I'm going to be visiting more sites, hopefully in slightly more aesthetically pleasing locations, in the weeks and months to come. Thanks for watching.